This is December 14th, 2025. And I think it's still morning. I don't think it's noon yet. And I thought I should make a journal entry, for you, my grandchildren, of one more thing that I think is very important, all right? And that would be under the category, you can think of it under this rubric, all right? Under this block of sin. Because actually, sin is actually the whole big deal. I mean, why we have like a religion, why we have a Christian religion, why Jesus came into the world, the whole story. Why Jesus came into the world was so that God could forgive us of our sins, but God had to have a sacrifice to prove something or other. Okay, well, it was a big sacrifice. That is the origins of our religion, okay? It comes out of sacrifice for sin. Okay, and that means being sorry for your sin. And in the whole history of society and everything, all from the beginning, we can look at okay, evil deeds, and that is definitely a sin. Doing evil deeds. All right, well, look, okay, that evil deeds is one thing, all right, but also people make sins, and people sin in many ways, because they sin basically because they don't know any better, for one thing, and because they don't know everything. All right. All right, proof of the original meaning of this story right here, of this concept right here, okay, of this fact right here is the Garden of Eden, all right? The very first temptation, all right, was, then you will know everything. You will know the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil. If you eat of this fruit. Okay? So, it had to know everything. But we had to know everything. And that's why we got ourselves into the predicament that we're in, because something about being human means that you need to know everything, and that's why you got to keep climbing the mountain of truth. And that's why this thing up here, and because climbing the mountain of truth is not a feat for sissies, or what I said, pussies, or weak people that aren't really going to try hard. Look, that's why if you see up at the top, on the blackboard, okay, at the very, very top, not for sissies. All right. If a person was gonna just decide that they were just gonna go ahead and be a sissy or a pussy, then they would do stuff like exploit things and exploit themselves and stuff like that, because they don't really care too much. And I don't know, take the easy way out and stuff, I do things right. Okay, but there comes a limit and bounds to everything about doing things right and knowing everything, okay? Now look, because I just got to show you that this is an object lesson. Okay. Where my red A-frame ladder is, and between that other aluminum ladder, all right, there's a gap. right there. Okay. Okay. And that is my joist. My main support is going to be my main support for what's going to be up there, another deck. All right. But it's resting on that thing up there. And matter of fact, man, I just got on my ladder up here at this one. Okay. Up there at that one. It hurt up there at that one right there, okay? There it goes all the way across. Okay. Okay, well, the height of that thing, I just eyed that. And when I put my level up there, it came out perfect. Okay? But this didn't come out perfect because this has to be straight, okay? But straight from these 3 posts, okay? But it's not, all right? But you know what? Look, if I was doing a job for somebody else, I would have to make it square, because like you can't you're supposed to be able to count on stuff that's to be square, and if you don't build it square, then it's more difficult to cut your wood, and you got to make every every end might have to have an angle or something to make it flush and stuff like that. It just makes it a lot more difficult if you don't make it square. All right, well, the point is, okay, that's kind of like managing your sin. All right, because it's easy not to be square. And I mean square. Okay, yeah. And you know what? They even used to talk about like the difference between squares and I don't know what the other one was. Could have been hippies, could have been freaks. It could have been rebels. Okay, because square is like the status quo. All right, but that's not really the sense for which I'm talking. I'm talking about actually square because it makes geometrical sense, okay? But I have toleration, and see, I can tolerate, my own sin, and that is not making it perfect. And the point, though, is that we sin not only because it's hard for us to make things perfect, but also we sin because we don't know everything, and that's why it's essential to always be climbing the mountain of truth, because that's the only way, and that's the only method, okay, with the only proper pursuit of productivity is going to be productive, okay, is we got to know more things that are true, right? True about everything, true about science, true about our history, true about everything, okay? True, our origins. Look, one more time. Not for sissies, okay. Now, okay, so I was talking about, managing sin and kind of what that means. And now look, on here it says fundamentally misunderstood. Because one of the things is, okay, we don't understand everything, but when you put people into like political and governmental and powerful offices that kind of dictate what the mood is going to be for everybody else, and not what the reality is going to be going forward, and what all the social dynamics and then whatever, dysfunctions that arise from being stupid. You can come to the point of here, and I think it's just synchronistic, a circumstance that makes you look twice, okay? Fundamentally misunderstood. Hey, now look. Yeah. So I'm gonna play it from right here, and then I'm just gonna pick it up because see what happened recently is the White House put out their they got to do it every so often, you know. I think it's either every presidential year or it might be every year. It needs to be re-upped, but they put out their strategy for their strategy, their policy. And this is a military policy, okay? Their military policy and objectives. I forget what the paper is actually called, but they do it by law. They have to do it. You got to say what their goals are and stuff like that. And now in the new one that just came out, this administration said that they were getting out of NATO. That we were no longer siding with our allies. We're going more toward Russia now. They think that Europe is a failing economy and now take sides with Russia. I swear to God, you know. I swear to God, this makes America like completely deranged. All right, like if you make America into like a caricature of a person, okay, well, it would be a very cartoonish character, okay, full of a lot of stupid, backward-ass, stupid, unlearned ignorance. An ignorance of history and an ignorance of actual, just true human, like, sensitivities, sensibilities, and morality. Based on things that we in this country have stated our stance on, things that are self-evident, that cannot be denied. Well, there's a lot of levels of things that are self-evident and cannot be denied, okay? And this guy, Warren Buffett, which I'm going to play because I just backed it up, you know, a little bit, but he does do a talk, okay, he's talking about one thing, but then he makes a point about power and how that this administration significantly misunderstood, fundamentally misunderstood the nature of power. And the nature of like having to get along with other kids in the playbox of the world. To put a swing on it, you know, how to get along as like a reasonable kind of person representing one of the countries in the world. Anyway, this guy Warren Buffett, he's an old guy, but I think he's maybe even older than Trump, but he's still got his wits about him, all right? And Trump is just like, he's just the end result of a sorry person, void of any kind of altruistic nerve or unself-serving, like, you know, like everything is like self-serving, okay, this kind of person I'm talking about, this is Trump, right? This is the end result of the self-serving kind of, like, okay, maybe you could even put it into the category of like freak of nature, okay, because it is partly from nature, but it also could be considered freak of nature, okay? Is definitely not the best end of nature, the whole spectrum between, you know, good and bad or something like that, or, you know, inviting or detestable, something like that. But okay, so I'm just gonna play this real quick and pick it up.
Now, and Europe just built one over the weekend, and America is discovering a very painful truth. Maintaining dominance isn't automatic. It requires maintaining relationships. It requires being reliable. It requires not walking away from 75 years of alliances because you think you can get a better deal in the short term. Trump didn't understand that, and now we are all going to live with the consequences. I want to step back for a moment and talk about what this reveals about power, because this is something the administration fundamentally misunderstood. Power isn't just about size. It's not just about having the biggest economy or the most nuclear weapons or the loudest voice on Twitter. Real power, sustainable power, is about relationships. It is about the architecture of dependence. It is about being the country that others need, not just the country that others fear. For 75 years, Europe needed the United States. They needed American protection, American weapons, American security guarantees, and that need gave America immense influence. It gave America leverage. It gave America the ability to shape European decisions on trade, on technology, on foreign policy, on sanctions, on everything that mattered. Trump looked at that relationship and saw weakness. He saw America giving and Europe taking. He saw freeloading. He saw unfairness. And he decided the way to fix it was to demand more, threaten more, and ultimately walk away. But what he didn't understand, what he apparently never even considered, is that leverage works both ways. Yes, Europe needed America, but America needed Europe too. America needed the market access. America needed the forward bases to project power globally. America needed the diplomatic support in the UN. America needed the technological partnerships. And most importantly, America needed Europe to not have alternatives. The moment Trump walked away, he handed Europe the freedom to build those alternatives. And they did it so fast, so completely, so decisively, that it is obvious they had been preparing for exactly this moment. This is what happens when you treat allies like clients. When you weaponize relationships that took generations to build. When you assume that because you are bigger, you can dictate terms without consequence. You don't strengthen your position. You teach the other side how to live without you. And once they learn that lesson, once they build the systems, the factories, the alliances, and the structures that make them independent, you don't get that leverage back. It is gone permanently. You cannot negotiate from a position of strength when the other side no longer needs what you are selling. That is exactly what just happened. Trump thought he was calling Europe's bluff. He thought they would panic, cave, and agree to whatever terms he wanted. But Europe wasn't bluffing. They were preparing. They were building the lifeboats while Trump was busy poking holes in the ship, and now they have sailed away, leaving us stranded on an island of our own making. And now America is discovering what it feels like to be on the outside of the most important defense and technology alliance being built in the 21st century. We are not banned.
So that's the place that we are right now. Okay. And this administration, with Trump as president, put out their strategy, and NATO was no longer included. And in fact, disregarded. And you heard Warren Buffett, what he said, okay? And that talk right there, that bit right there, almost brings tears to my eyes. Because it is the great divorce between America and Europe. And for what? Because we got a president who is deranged. So, see, we, the whole American population, okay, because everybody is included, all right? That is the law, one first law, Sun Tzu, right? Everybody is included, all right? So it's we, It's not them. Okay, we put the monster of Mar-a-Lago in office, okay? And what do we expect a monster in office to be doing, okay? But see, the thing is, everybody sinned because they didn't know any better. They didn't know everything. They were kind of stupid, you know? They didn't really pay attention to really stuff that really mattered, okay? They weren't realizing that all the time they were on the razor's edge. But when they caught themselves and found themselves on the razor's edge, then they realized, I better conform because this is the land of Sun Tzu. And Sun Tzu will dictate. Alright, because the battle will begin. And even the other guy said the other day, okay, conflict is no longer a distance away from us, okay? Now it's at our door. And it's going to be coming at our door even worse and worse, in my opinion. Because I heard the talks, man. We're like heading toward catastrophe. Economically. And America is... and it's just ironic how, like, Trump always, his whole life, has always accused everybody else of his own crimes and his own vices. Okay, that's why he brings them up so well, because he knows who he is, and he thinks he's just playing a game that way, all right? And a game of bluff. But come to find out, you know, it's more than a game of bluff. And now it's like a great divorce. And who can tell what the future holds, all right? It could, if you look at it, it can look really, really bad. Like if something doesn't happen soon, you know, we're going to be too far down the hole of the shitter to ever come back. And if there is a possibility for us even to come back, you know, we better at least have some smart people in the think tank that can help us navigate the way, you know. This is why a lot of people don't believe in democracy, because, and this actually is, you know, I already said Trump does prove to me that humanity cannot be trusted, all right? But it is the best that we got, unless we want to be taken over by robots and super intelligence based on silicone, and just let's say to hell with the human experience. Let's just, you know, try to make it continue in Silicon Valley. I'm not talking about California either. I'm talking about as opposed to human flesh, silicone. And anyway, you know, there's always business of managing our sin. And, you know, we have to admit, all right, where we have been wrong. And this is prayer of Jesus Christ, you know. Forgive us of our sins, for as we forgive those who, well, it ain't sin against us, but it's offend us. But how does that go? Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. All right. I'm just going to call this one Managing Our Sin, and leave it at that.